So yeah, I'm Lee. I am from Spotify. I work on the Backstage project. When I started with Backstage, it was an internal tool at Spotify supporting the engineering community there. We're now supporting about 4 million engineers outside of Spotify. So it's grown a little bit. As mentioned, I'm from the UK. I'm from Manchester. As such, I feel like I need to start properly and say I'm sorry. Because that's what we do in England. What on earth is Backstage anyway? Well, if you went to our website, backstage.io, this is what you would find. It's an open platform for building developer portals. Created at Spotify, and it has been donated to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, that's a mouthful, about 2 to 3 years ago. Okay, that's great. So what the hell does that mean? Well, let's break that down bit by bit. I wanted to start with, I don't know if that's white, if you can tell, but that's a different color. That's white. I wanted to start with developer portals, and then we can go into the open source part of it. So this is a screenshot from a few weeks ago. One of the engineers working in one of our release squads at Spotify. And this is the problem. This is why developer portals, for me, this is why developer portals exist. I hate browsers at the best of times. I hate it when I have 2 tabs open. As an engineer, this was scrolling. You know, you've got everything from GitHub. Maybe you've got something on Azure open. You've got some documentation open, PagerDuty, some spreadsheets. You've got some Jenkins tabs open and bits and pieces. And the problem that this causes is cognitive load. It's the context switching. As an engineer, whenever I got a task from my manager way back in the day when they used to let me play with the code, I wanted to focus on that task. You know, I was improve X by something, or solve this problem for this user, or resolve this bug fix for me. And to be able to do that, back when I was engineering, I maybe had 3 tabs open, and I got annoyed because I'm switching between between each one, and each one has a different interface. Each one has a different purpose. Each one is a slightly different tool and operates in a slightly different way. And every time I switch something up here, I have to toggle a switch. I have to think about a different process, and then I have to go back. So you're constantly going in and out of things, and it's causing this cognitive load. This is somewhere where I'd like to get us to. Maybe it's not Backstage and maybe it's not GitHub for you, but I would love to get to the place where we have maybe your IDEs open, you've got a terminal open, you might have GitHub open, and you might have something like Backstage open. A developer portal, a developer portal is there to reduce that cognitive load. It is there to reduce the amount of time that you spend thinking about all of those things underneath the hood that really you don't need to be thinking about right now. What you should be thinking about is solving that problem for your end user. So that's where Backstage comes in. Fundamentally, for every organization building software, we're all trying to do something in this space. We are trying to get our problem solved quickly. We're trying to do that at an ever-increasing scale to support more and more people out there. And as a result of doing these 2 things, we've got this growing number of services, growing number of modules, of components, of things that we need to care about. So working in an organization in software generally comes down to, how do I balance and play off these 3 things? How do I continue to deliver software at speed, but maintain the high quality? How do I increasingly do that at a higher level of scale, more and more users, more and more impact? And how the hell do I deal with the 10,000 software components that I've now just created and don't know what to do with? And again, a slightly different view, but this is where I hope Backstage comes into it. And this is where it can help and support. So that's Backstage a little bit, and that's developer portals. What about the rest of it? An open platform for building. I didn't really kind of think about that sentence as I said it. Okay, The tabs earlier, when you look at an open source community, this is the CNCF landscape. It's from about 6 months ago. So there's going to be a few changes in here. There's a few extra bits. I apologize. It's really, really small. I couldn't fit it on the slide in any other way. Backstage is on here. It's all the way up there. But effectively, that looks terrible. Each one of these colored little dots that you can see is a different tool, a different service, a different component, all part of the Cloud Native Compute Foundation's open source portfolio. So take tabs that we were looking at before and exponentially increase that complexity. But open source is incredibly powerful and incredibly cool. It allows you to have a piece of software that, for Backstage, it was 5 engineers, an engineering manager, and a product manager at the time. And we had some ideas. What we didn't have was all of those ideas from the 4 million engineers that we're supporting right now coming in and giving us different ways of working, different ways of using software, different ways of supporting people out there in the community. So open source can be complex. There's a lot of tools, a lot of things out there, but it's somewhere where you can have influence, and it's somewhere where your project can be influenced and taken in different directions you've never thought of, which I'll come to in a little bit. But going back to Backstage, we open sourced Backstage in early 2020. It was actually the very first day that we were sent to work from home because of COVID, unfortunately. And we launched Backstage on the Monday morning with a big red button, and each of us with a glass of brandy or something to hand. It was about 9:20 a.m. in the morning. But where that leaves us right now, again, these stats are a couple of months out of date. 21,000 stars, 1,000 plus contributors to the project. This is where I'm saying the brain trust, if you will, in open source, bringing all of these ideas. 9,000 members in the community on Discord. 1,000 companies have adopted. 1,000 companies are thinking of adopting Backstage. And we hold regular office hours each week with about 200 companies attending those. And the number I like, 4 million engineers. I went from working with a team where we supported 4,000 in Spotify to now I can say we're supporting 4 million engineers out in the world. I love this project. I love the opportunity it's given me and what it does. Now, Backstage, as I mentioned, the power really comes from the community. Backstage is built in a way, and we'll dive into it in more detail shortly, but it's built in a very extensible way around a plugin model. When we very first created Backstage, we were trying to solve a couple of very specific problems at Spotify. The first one was hypergrowth. At the time, we were growing exponentially. We had hundreds of engineers coming in each week and joining the teams. We had what Amazon would describe as a ball, or it's a ball of services, I think, the way Amazon describes it. We had thousands and thousands. We now have 10,000s and thousands of services. And Backstage started out originally as an inventory. With all of the new starters coming in, with all of these new teams spooling up, Spotify's mentality has always been ownership and speed. I don't want to tell this team what to do with their services as much as I don't want that team over there to tell me what to do with mine and how we should operate them. They're our services. We want the teams to feel ownership. We also want the teams to move fast. Slowness will kill us. So we want the teams to move fast. That's great. The challenge we were hitting at the time, we had like 7 or 8 different authentication services going as an example. So you had an authentication service for HR systems, authentication services for platform-based systems. You had authentication services for end-user systems and so on and so forth. And of course, don't forget the authentication service for Tuesday afternoon when it's raining and you're standing on one leg. So duplication became a challenge. We didn't want to remove the freedom to be able to spool stuff up when you wanted to and create new things, but we wanted to expose what was already out there and give you the choice and say, hey, here's the services that we already have. Here's the people who own them. Maybe you can use one of those rather than starting up something new. If not, start something new. That's fine. No issue with that. So it started as an inventory service for Spotify. And as that inventory service kind of took hold, very, very basic. Here's a list of services. Here's a list of owners of said services. What we noticed was teams started to attach tools for their services. So things to make it easier to operate on their services. Those tools are what we call plugins today in Backstage. Going back to the ownership of Backstage, it's a team of, still today, it is a team of 5 software engineers that look after the instance of Backstage for Spotify. They know Backstage. They know it inside and out. You know what they don't know? You know what I don't know? Kubernetes. It's great. It's fantastic. Get a ton of stuff done. It's blooming complicated. I have no clue. I will make a mess. It'll take me 3 days just to realize I've done something wrong. I am not an expert in Kubernetes. At Spotify, we have a team that looks after Kubernetes and all of that infrastructure side of things for the Spotify apps. They're the experts. They're the people who can own a Kubernetes plugin for Backstage. So it's really, really simple. It's a single PR request from any team across Spotify or now in the open source community that says, hey, I want to create a plugin to do X. The core team, the Backstage team will say, that looks great. Like, you know, it's not something crazy like, I don't know, building a rocket ship engine or something like that. That doesn't really align with Spotify. So that looks good. Off you go. And then just through GitHub code owners, that team then becomes the owner of that plugin. They own the destiny. They are the experts. They take it forward. Multiply that against 4 million engineers, all of those contributors, you start to get a community around Backstage, building out all of this functionality that as an potential adopter of Backstage or potential user of Backstage, you know, maybe you want something to manage GitOps clusters. I don't know how to do that. I go and have a quick look in the plugins. Somebody's already done it for me. Fantastic. I fill in a form, install the plugin, away we go. One way that this has shown up, or one way early doors that this showed up for Spotify, when I started to work on the Backstage project, when I very first started at Spotify, we had an issue that had been open for years, to be brutally honest, and that was for a dark mode of Backstage. Nothing fancy, just I want this UI to not burn the back of my corneas out, please, every time I use it. And for that, our internal team, 5 engineers, it had been deprioritized and deprioritized. There was always something. Authentication came up, or we need a new software templating system, or plugins want to talk to each other and share and exchange data, etc. So dark mode, lower and lower and lower and lower. When we open sourced, within the first few weeks, I think it was, we created an issue in the open source. I sat down with one of our designers and said, hey, can you just mock what Backstage in dark mode might look like? And she very kindly scanned together a few images. We put it into this issue, threw it out into the open source. Within 2 hours, somebody had assigned themselves to it. Within 12 hours, we had the issue back in its initial form, fully functional with a few things that we wanted to tweak. Within 24 hours, it was completed, it was merged, it was brought back into Spotify, and my boss's boss noticed, hey, I've been asking for dark mode for like 3 years, what the hell? Open source. It was the power of the open source community that literally brought it in for us. 3 aspects that we focus on for Backstage. One we've touched on a little bit, speed. Most organizations, you want to move fast. You don't want to get stuck in second place. You don't want to fall behind. As an engineer, I want to focus on the task in hand. I don't want to focus on the plumbing, on the pipe work, on the build system underneath, on this, on that isn't solving the issue that I want to solve. As an engineer, yes, I want to have access to all of that. Yes, I want to be able to do that if I want to. really what I want is either somebody to do it for me, somebody to somehow to surface the information I need at hand as I need it, and for me to basically be in my IDE, running those builds, running those tests, making sure that things are running and getting this code shipped. Backstage, one aspect that we'll take a look at is speed. Standards, my favorite. Everybody likes talking about standards. GDPR, ITGC. Okay, just me. We're going to take a quick look at standards. Standards is actually my favorite thing of all of these three things, if I'm going to be a complete nerd. And why is it my favorite topic? Because I don't have to think about them. So I'm going to show you how you can use Backstage to not have to think about standards. An ecosystem, we've touched a little bit already on the plugin ecosystem and the power of the community. So, as mentioned, when we got started with Backstage, Backstage didn't look like anything like it does today. And I'll show you some screens and we'll go through a couple of videos of Backstage. It effectively started as that list. Started as a list. People started to add things to it. We saw that and saw an opportunity and said, right, how do we build out from here and where do we go? That was our first value add kind of problem that we was trying to solve. We'll come to the second one in a minute, but for this first one, what does this look like today? Today, Backstage has a tool in it called the software catalog. And the software catalog is an inventory. It allows you to quickly see the status of various different APIs, various different services, a whole host of things that you can track in there. The real power comes from the plugins again, because what you can do is you can define, when I go and look at this service and I see this overview, you can define the different plugins that you see against it. Maybe you have a PagerDuty plugin on there. You're concerned because this is a tier 1 service. You want to know what issues are happening against this service and who's on call and just in case. So you can pull that there. Maybe you want to see the CI/CD status and integrate that in here as well. The power of Backstage is not having 200 different plugins. It's not really about having all of your assets and services and everything tracked. The power of Backstage is how does it connect between all of these things and give you this journey. So I want to show you a quick video of the software catalog. In here, I'm going to go and look at an API first, and you'll be able to see the screens, how it looks and how it integrates things for the APIs. I'm then going to go and switch to go and look at a service that consumes that API. So again, you can see how it all connects, and as an engineer using the platform, how I can build this user journey through and through. Okay, going into software catalog. This is the catalog here. I select APIs. I can't see from here. It gives me relations from my APIs. It gives me who is consuming said APIs. I can go and play with the definitions around this particular API that I'm looking at here. I can even go and see the documentation right there, right next to it about this API. Now I'm going to go back to the catalog again. This time I'm going to go and look at everything that is in production. And here I click into one service called the Lunch app. I can see the API that we were just looking at is consumed there. I can go and check CI/CD status. I can even jump all the way down into the build logs that are pulled from GitHub or GitLab or whatever it is that you're using and dive deep into that information there. Again, APIs, consumed APIs, documentation. So it's a little bit of a whirlwind. So I'm just going to step through and pause. So the software catalog, you saw an inventory. When you click into an inventory, you get an overview page. The overview page gives you what we think is the most relevant information for the thing you're looking at. So we're looking at an API called Flight Info. It's giving me the relations here, who is consuming it, who it is consumed by for my API, and I can jump all the way through. Across the top, as we go through, I think the next thing I click into is definition. You paused? Yes. So click into definition. Of course, definition makes sense for an API. I want to be able to look at that and understand it, as does documentation. Docs is the third one that I clicked into. All of these here are plugins. So when you install Backstage, you can define and say, if I'm looking at a web service, a front-end web service, let's say, here's the plugins I want you to display across the top. If I'm looking at an API, display these plugins for me. It's contextual information surfaced just at the right point as you're using the software, as you're running through your journey. So as we go through to the service, you'll see it changes, of course. So now we have across the top overview, CI/CD, code insights, API, dependencies, docs, pull request, to do, and then we're actually have installed Rootly here, which is a bit like PagerDuty for incident management. Backstage, the point of Backstage is, as said, it's not to have 200 plugins. It's not to have 1,000 different components in it. It's how does it connect these dots and how does it surface the right information at the right time for the user. Okay, software creation, standards. I got one laugh, yes. So for standards, the thing that I truly hated when I was engineering on a day-to-day basis was I knew I could go and make this cool little Node app and I could probably do it in like a couple of hours and it'll do all of this cool stuff and it's going to be amazing. And it's going to be really small code because I'm going to pull in every library under the sun. It's going to be really, really stable as a result. But my manager would then come and he would stop me and say, what about GDPR compliance? What about ITGC? What about all of our security requirements that we have for our organization? How are you dealing with those? How is this repeatable? Like, don't build it from scratch. In Backstage, we have a tool called software templates. You can think of them as cookie cutter templates. So the power of these with Backstage, again, in that ownership model, you can say, I'm going to create a new React app template. I'm going to follow Spotify's best practices. I'm going to tag in through Git our security team, and they're going to add in all the security compliance stuff that I need. I'm then going to contact the compliance team. They're going to fill in all the latest GDPR, ITGC, all of that good stuff. For me, I don't have to think about it. Like, it takes that pain away. And the beauty of it being a template, it's repeatable. All of a sudden, all of these new onboarding engineers that you've got coming into your organization, all of the new team members that you're supporting and helping to skill up, all of a sudden, they get access to these templates. They can build and repeat the exact same software creation process as you. And whereas if I was to do this on myself, all of these compliance, all of this security, all of these bits and pieces, there's like half a week for me of doing and getting it wrong and retrying and so on. With a template, fill it in, 30 seconds later, you've got your piece of software. So I'm just going to come in, I'm going to come in and create. I'm going to create a React app template. I'm going to give it some basic information. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to give it a description and an owner. Okay, I'm going to tell you the repositories to put it in, who owns the repositories and where are they. And then I'm effectively going to hit go. Okay, so what this is doing is it is now pulling a template from GitHub. It's bringing that in. It's then going to build that software based upon that template, publish it to GitHub, and then the really powerful part, connect it into Backstage. So when we were looking at CI/CD and all of that stuff going across the top, well, here it is created in GitHub. That's the first part. It's created some blank documentation for me, some example stuff to help me get going. If I go and look at it in the catalog, it's now been connected up. It's connected automatically into CI/CD. It's connected automatically into Code Insights, into APIs, dependencies. It's generated some documentation for us to get going. All of a sudden, I don't have to think about, how do I connect this into Jenkins again? How do I connect this into there? It handles it for me. And Backstage, being flexible, it will work across no matter the tools. If you use GitHub, fine. If you use GitLab, great. If you use Jenkins, if you use Gradle, if you all of the different tools, There's generally a plugin out there for it right now. And then the last piece to show, I mentioned a little bit about onboarding, bringing new team members in and growing your organization at scale. At Spotify, what we do is we run what we call an engineering bootcamp. And in that engineering bootcamp, as a new Spotifyer, you'll be paired with 4 or 5 or 6 other new Spotifyers, and you create a team for a week. And your challenge in that week is to go and build some new integration into the Spotify app. When I did it, it was go and build the global top 10 playlists into the app. And to help and support that, we run what we call golden paths. Now, these are not instructions, you must follow this, and this is the only way that you're allowed to work. No. This is the recommended way that we say build software for Spotify in this way. And if you follow that golden path, all of the tools, all of the documentation, all of the support will be there for you to help you. And if any of those tools don't work, or if that documentation is wrong, then we're going to give you a way that you can immediately open an issue against it in GitHub, and we're going to go and get it fixed. So the way that the onboarding works for these boot camps is basically all of the teams come in, they sit down with Backstage, they have the Golden Path documentation. Documentation is built through TechDocs, the TechDocs plugin, for Backstage. It's docs like code. So it's markdown that is saved in the repo with the software. At build time, it is then built and compiled and pushed to Backstage. The reason we do that is if you're going to make a change to a piece of software and the documentation is right there, why wouldn't you just update the documentation at the same time as part of that pull request? Yeah? Otherwise, documentation will go stale. It's not perfect. Spotify still has Google Docs floating around. We still have Confluence floating around. But for the majority of our technical documentation, it's up to date, it's accurate, it's in Backstage. Being in Backstage also means it's interactive. So if you're going through the documentation and it says, right, go to this authentication service and create, then when you click into it, it will deep link you into that plugin there and then. Forget the context switching, forget bouncing between tabs. It's there, it's a single pane of glass, single pane of information. So a quick look at that setup then. Okay, I come across, I go to documentation, into Golden Path for backend engineering. This is actually the Spotify Golden Path as well. So you're seeing actual what it does look like. Of course, it's very readable on here. It looks great, right? But all of the links all deep link you into Spotify, deeper into Backstage. If you found an issue with the documentation, I just clicked on GitHub for it. I can go in and add a comment, create, change, create an issue against that piece of documentation. It's all about trust. We want people to be able to go in there and trust that documentation. So that's why we put it on that level. To wrap up, a couple of things around the core philosophy, and then just a quick, maybe funny story, I hope. Backstage, developer portal. Backstage is the interface. It's an aggregator. It is rarely the source of truth. The source of truth comes from all of the different services and everything else that you are integrating with. It's built around autonomy. I don't know Kubernetes. I'm going to make the worst mistakes if I build that out. I want the Kubernetes experts at Spotify to own that for me. Effectively, the team closest to the problem owns the plugin. And then regarding ownership, there always should be a single point of contact. Software is hard. When teams change, move around, organizations shift, you end up with dangling software. We try and avoid that as best as possible. And then, of course, the point of Backstage is not to take control, it's to empower. Reduce that cognitive switching, reduce that cognitive load. And to demonstrate that, I mean, effectively, Backstage is the UI here. It's everything within this box to an effect. These are plugins, 3 or 4 different types of plugins. A front-end plugin that is standalone, doesn't have any extra data, everything is stored within the front end. A plugin, a Lighthouse plugin here that has its own backend and its own DB. Again, Backstage is not the source of truth. The The source of truth is coming from here. Similarly, service catalog is set up in a very similar way. And then as an example, Circle CI plugin goes to a proxy, which then goes off to Circle CI for the data to pull in. Is it worth it? It's a heck of a lot of effort. We've spent 5, 6, 7, 8 years on this now. Well, going back to the onboarding thing, bringing in new engineers. One of the things that we tracked pre and post was effectively the time to 10th pull request. We figured, as an approximation, an engineer becomes effective. They're delivering effective code in the product around the time that they're submitting their 10th PR. Pre-Backstage, 66 days. Post-Backstage, 22 days. 66% drop. Some early statistics. Measuring productivity is really hard. The chat from Meta yesterday gave a really good talk of you'll have hundreds of different metrics around productivity, and it's really hard to kind of define it. So survey, the green one is internal at Spotify. Internal users satisfied with Backstage, 86%. 80% of contributions to Backstage come from teams that are not the Backstage team. They're not the 5 guys that are running it. It's all of the other teams. That's even high now. It's 90-something, I think, now. 150 plugins. We're now closer to 250 plugins these days, extending the software capability. So some stats associated alongside Backstage, if you will. Users of Backstage 2.3 times more active in GitHub. Users of Backstage create 2 times more changes in 17% less cycle time. Deploy software 2 times as often, and their software deployed for 3 times as long. And are 5% more likely to be at Spotify 1 year later through using Backstage. This is just a quick screen of what Backstage looks like at Spotify. This is just the homepage. You have context-specific things, so I can go direct into a service and have it context-aware, or you can be more generic and go to the core stuff. But this is the homepage for Backstage. This one's my favorite. Backstage saved my life. And it is no joke of a matter. I'm genuinely serious. Early on in the pandemic was when we launched Backstage out into the open source world. And one company based in London called Weaveworks, they put together Firecube COVID. And this is early in the pandemic, so we're still trying to understand what's going on. We don't have the vaccinations yet or anything like that. And what this tool does, they noticed there was a slowdown from when a person comes into the hospital suspected of COVID, they would go and get an x-ray of their lungs, and then there was a slowdown from getting that x-ray to the doctor, multiples of hours, for unknown reasons. I don't know why. So what they did was they took Backstage to show how flexible it is. They took Backstage, they plugged it into the APIs and systems at some of the hospitals in London. They basically, as the x-ray was took, it was uploaded straight into here. They then ran ML models against the lungs, where across the top there it's got, what is it? If the lungs are normal, pneumonia, or COVID-19, and it would basically give an indicator as to whether the person has it or not. And this was instantly available for the doctor. Back end of last year, I became really ill. It wasn't COVID, but I ended up at one of the hospitals that were using Backstage. And if you've never had it, I highly recommend it. They give you some fantastic drugs, and they put a camera down your throat. It's the most joyful experience I've ever had. But one of the doctors, as I'm going through this, they ended up having to do it twice. And if you've never had it done, you're wheeled into like this operating theatre room. There's a big machine there, and then this camera on a tube. And you're kind of like that. And then on the other side is like computers and where they can see everything and so on and so forth. And they did the first one. And then the doctor comes over and says, right, I like, that's great. We need to do a second one. And I'm still kind of a little bit spaced out and everything. I'm like, oh, great, I'll see you in a few weeks. No, we're going to do it now. And we're going to change. And the guy started changing the pipe. So to calm me down, his bedside manner was, he knew I'd worked at Spotify. He'd asked me as I was coming in. He said, oh, we use some Spotify software here. and he spun the screen around, and it was 5G COVID. But instead of a lung, you can imagine the interior of my stomach, which I'm sure is lovely for you to imagine. But it was my, it was my insides. If I hadn't been on all of the drugs, it would have been fantastic. This is great, so on and so forth, da-da-da-da. But they were using it to capture all of the oscopy images for all of the patients going through the Royal London Hospital. Those images that were captured and stored in Backstage, instantly available to the doctors, allowed the doctors that were treating me to find out what was going on straight there and then and solve a problem that had basically had me incapacitated for about 8 months. I don't even allowed to do this. No shit. Backstage saved my life. So, and that brings me to the end of the talk today. So thank you very much. If there are any questions.